I, like a lot of you out there, do not have a lot of room to work on projects. I have a single car garage, a small workbench, and an unfinished part of the basement, and that's pretty much it. And the garage space is easiest to clean out, but it's also full of kid stuff, bikes, lawn maintenance stuff, outdoor equipment, all kinds of stuff that make it really hard to work in this garage. I had a system. I had a nice table using tough-built sawhorses that work great. I can put my miter saw on it and I can cut tons of small stuff all day long. The problem became with big pieces of material, and right now I'm doing a wainscoting project and I'm doing some projects with radiator covers and a whole bunch of other stuff that needs to be cut and then assembled. So I'd really like to use that table as an assembly table and find a better way of cutting large material. And right now, large material is a problem. It takes up the whole floor of the garage, so I am cutting on the floor. It is killing my knees, it is killing my back. I couldn't even use a table if I wanted to because the pieces are 16 feet long, which means they teeter-totter and I'm propping them up on the handlebars of a bike or a shelf in the back of the garage. All kinds of things to make it work, and honestly, it doesn't work all that great. It's not super safe. Now, some of you must be wondering, why don't I just set up outside? I have a garage, so I must have a driveway. There must be some place where I could set up some sawhorses, some other stuff I have around, and make this much easier for myself. Well, this is why. Sometimes during certain parts of the year, I don't have many options about where to work and I have to work inside. So I need to find a better solution. Now, I finally went out and I bought a miter saw stand, and this stand will get the saw up off the floor. It will be able to stretch out and hold these longer pieces of wood so I can cut them easier and hopefully make this a much more usable space. The miter saw stand that I purchased is the Dewalt 723. It goes along with the miter saw that I already have from Dewalt. Now, this is the bigger, heavier duty one. I was thinking about getting the smaller one, the 724, because it was easier to move around, but it was out of stock. So fate just seems to have predicated that I have now the bigger one, which should work really good because it has outriggers that can support these full 16-foot pieces of wood that I'm working on. So this is the stand, and first off, it really isn't that heavy. I can pick it up pretty easily with one hand. It has this nice carrying handle that makes it easy to do that. These levers over here make it pretty easy to release the legs, and they just pop up like this. And these lock into place nice and easy. Then I can just grab this and flip it on over. The base of the stand sets up pretty easy, and lengthwise it's 69.5 inches. And according to the specs, this can support 500 pounds. Now, this is the 724 unit. There is a model that is a DWX723, and that's a smaller version. Still supports the 500 pounds, but is only 40 inches in length. So it's a little bit more limited in how large of a piece of wood you can cut. And with the outriggers, this one can do a 16-foot piece of wood, while the smaller version can only do a 10-foot piece of wood. Now, while the stand itself looks really sturdy, there are two things I would have liked to have seen in this. The legs are not adjustable, so there is only one height. Now, that's not a big problem since it's a pretty comfortable height to work on, but there's no adjustment based on how tall you are. So if you are really tall or really short and you want to make this higher or lower, you can't do that. The bigger problem, though, comes with the fact that the legs don't have any levelers on it. And that means if you don't have a perfectly level surface, you're gonna get some rock. Luckily, this can be shimmed pretty easily, and this is pretty rock solid. The only place that there's a little bit of wiggle is laterally back and forth across it. So if I go like this, you'll see there's a little bit of shake. There's not much you can do about that. That's because of a little give that's in the locking joints, but it shouldn't affect the overall stability of the stand as a whole. And for a $200 stand, which is almost half the cost of the miter saw itself, it would have been nice to have some leg levelers. Now that we have the base all set up, we can go ahead and start mounting the saw to it. And to do that, there are these quick releases that go on the stand, and this mounts to the bottom of the saw. So the way that this connects to the stand base is that you push this double ratchet safety piece in. If you see, there's a little small mechanism here, and then it goes all the way to close, and then it snaps onto the stand. So I'm going to go ahead and snap the two that came with the kit onto the stand, and then we'll go ahead and we will set it up to bolt the saw on. A nice feature of these quick release clamps is that once they're mounted to the saw, they have these little rubber feet on the bottom. So when you take the saw off the stand, you can lay it down on the ground without scratching up anything. Now I've just put the saw on top of the stand to show this more simply, but this is much easier to do on the floor. In fact, directions recommend that as you put each side on, that you balance the other side out on the top of a 2x4. But to show how it mounts simply with these small carriage bolts, I have it up on the stand. I have the other three sides already connected, and this is how it works. There's 4 of these bolts. They come in from the bottom, and the screw has a little square wedge in the bottom of it so that it doesn't turn. You put it in, a washer, a lock washer, and then the nut. And just tighten this down, and that's it. Now that we have the saw all set up on the stand, we're going to talk a little bit about one of the features, which is these Outrigger support stands that project out from the stand. Now, for this, I'm going to get a little help from my assistant, but it's pretty easy. First of all you do is you loosen up this latch right here, and then they just simply slide right on out, and these will extend on both sides so that you can support up to a 16-foot piece of material for cutting. Now that the saw is mounted and everything's put on the stand, the final accessories to attach are these support accessories. And the way these work is they just slide right onto the end of the Outrigger and then tighten down. These supports are multifunctional. They can be used with this flat surface, so you can just slide the materials across it and adjust it to cut on the saw, or they have these stops that can be flipped up. Now with these stops flipped up, it's very easy to make repeatable cuts. You can just adjust the Outrigger to the right length and saw the same size wood over and over again. And this will be actually really great for the project I'm working on, where I am actually cutting a lot of different pieces of wood to match in with the wainscot, and they're all the same size. So it will be nice to set it once and just cut over and over again really quickly. Another really interesting thing about these is I've watched other reviews about this stand online, and people complained about this stop being really rickety and wobbly. Now it does slide intentionally back and forth, and that's just to make it support material a little bit better depending on how it's laying across the bed of the saw. But this piece right here, and people talked about these locks being loose, it doesn't seem to do that on this one. It's pretty straight and pretty stable, and maybe there's a little wobble of a fraction of an inch, a very small fraction of an inch, but I don't think that would actually change any of your cutting, especially if you're careful. Now, if you wanted to make it even better, I think you can tighten down these bolts, and basically you wouldn't have the side-to-side slide, but you would be able to make this rock solid. So I don't see there being any problem with these, and maybe it's just something that was quietly revised since some of the older reviews, but this newer model or newer version of it doesn't seem to have that problem with these stops. And again, they can just flip up and down like this. Now, in addition to being able to connect these to the Outriggers to extend them outward, they can also be connected to this T-track and slid in for smaller pieces of wood or closer work. The other nice thing about being able to slide into this T-track is it makes it really easy to calibrate the height to match the bed of the saw. Now, this is a Dewalt saw, but this stand can work with any type of miter saw, so being able to adjust the height of these is really important. And all you do is loosen up these two side brackets and then raise it up to the edge and then tighten them back down. So as you can see, even though this stand is designed to cut pieces of wood up to 16 feet in length, it is still really compact, and there's quite a bit of space underneath the saw for the shop vac so that I can keep that connected for dust collection. It also gives me a lot of room to keep any other tools and accessories that I might need while I'm working with it. But the number one most important thing to me is it finally gets me off my knees and doesn't have me bent over on my back so that I can barely walk at night. And it's much more comfortable and easy to use. Plus it looks a lot better than the old setup. I just made a ton of cuts on this setup and my back feels great. Everything's coming out perfect. It's significantly easier to line everything up without having to force the boards around on the ground. Even on the very, very long heavy boards, I was cutting 1x12s. It went super smooth, super easy, and having the outriggers be adjustable made it very, very easy to get the wood so that it was supported and nothing fell off after the cut, nothing bowed, nothing caused anything to splinter. So it worked great so far. Now I want to go try something that I was really looking forward to, and that's doing repetitive cuts. Since I'm working on a wainscoting project, there's tons of styles that I need to cut, and they all need to be the same length. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set this up to do that, and let's try some repetitive cutting. So I've used this board that I've already cut as a template, and I set it up against this backstop, and I checked it against the blade. So now I can just take the long board, push it up against here, cut it, and keep on going doing the same thing, and I should get a whole bunch of styles that are all exactly the same size. So that was really super easy. This was my template board, and as you can see, I was able to reproduce it perfectly through a whole 16-foot piece of lumber, and now I'm ready to go get these installed. So far, so good. The stand has held up to everything I've thrown at it, from repeatable cuts to longer cuts. Now let's do a durability test. Let's see how this stand handles a very, very heavy 6x6 treated piece of timber. That's freaking heavy. That was pretty impressive. This was a very, very heavy 6x6. And the fact that it was brand new, so it was still a little wet, and it's been sitting outside in the freezing cold, so it was a little iced over. It worked perfect, saw had no problem. It was harder for me to get on the sand than to cut it once it was up there. There was a little bit of an issue with one of these retainers coming a little loose and starting to sag during the cut, but ultimately it made no difference, and I should have probably checked it and tightened it up a lot more than it was before I made the cut. So I would say this is a very positive result. So we've pretty much run this stand through its paces, and all in all, it's made my life a lot easier, especially for a little less than 200 bucks that I was able to buy it for. There were a couple things I didn't like, and let's start there. I really wish this had some kind of adjustable legs or some kind of levelers just to make it easier to set up on uneven surfaces. It's a portable stand and it's made to move around, especially go from job site to job site. And when you do that, you never know what kind of ground you're going to be, whether it's a sidewalk, a garage, inside an unfinished house. And to have those levelers would really be nice to make it easier to set up. Beyond that, everything worked great. The stand was super sturdy. The brackets that support the wings going out, they were able to hold these 6x6s no problem. Now, if it was a very, very long one, they might have started to bend and flex a little bit. In that case, they do make an accessory that kind of braces that up as the extensions go very far out. But I didn't need those braces for anything I was cutting, so maybe in the future I'll add those and update this review. The fact that it raises everything up makes it easy to cut at a normal height. It makes it easier to make measurements. It also makes it easier to connect to the shop vac and the dust extraction, which kept the garage much, much cleaner, which makes me happy because I'm not tracking dust all through the inside of the house and getting yelled at constantly from the wife. Now, earlier in the video, I said I wish I maybe had gotten the roller one to make it easier to roll the saw around. Now, after using this one, I think I'm pretty happy with what I got. The rollers would have been nice, but it still would have made the unit pretty big to put away, and it didn't quite give all the versatility of having the Outriggers go as far as 16 feet for large pieces of wood. It's still pretty easy to move around. These legs right here that quickly snap onto the stand, when they come off, they have rubber feet, so it makes it really easy to remove the saw, put it down on the ground, and move the stand someplace else. The stand itself, while it's long, it's still pretty light. It's just under 30 pounds. So I can pick this up, anyone can really pick this up and move it around. And now the length could be a problem, but since it stands upright, you can put it in a corner and, you know, pretty much forget about it until you need it again. The saw itself is actually a harder thing to store than the stand. All right, that pretty much sums up everything from this video. I would give this product, I'll say a B+ because I really wanted those levelers, but it did everything I could ask for, and the fact is, even though it's a DeWalt product and I have a DeWalt saw, it doesn't have to work with a DeWalt saw, and it's pretty versatile as far as the setup to be able to connect any miter saw that you might have. So if you like this video and want to see more, please subscribe and like the video below, and until next time, happy sawing!
Do you love the miter saw stand? Did you give a kiss?